Welcome back to Brazilian Wood Depot's YouTube channel. My name is Sam, and today we're talking about Brown Balau, which is why I'm in my Brown Balau shed. We'll talk a little bit about where it comes from, how it's used, and why it has become so popular, so stay tuned. The tightening points here.
Fine, but it should be a minimum of 3/4 inches. So
the bottom expands out. I don't want to go into too great a detail. All right, like I said, we're talking about Brown Balau today. For starters, Balau is spelled B-A-L-A-U and pronounced Balau. There are a few different varieties of Balau. We're mainly going to focus on Brown Balau today, but let's just get it out of the way. There are two other varietals. One is called Yellow Balau, and that's what I have here. You can see it's much lighter in color. This side is oiled, this side is not. And then there's also Red Balau. I only have Red Balau in deck tiles, and this is a Red Balau deck tile. Now, standing next to the Brown Balau, it might look pretty similar in tone, but once this is oiled up, it really is very red. And again, I'm not going to talk much about Red Balau or Yellow Balau. This video today is about Brown Balau. Just thought I'd get that out of the way. Okay, so Brown Balau and all of the Balaus are only Asian species. They're native to Southeast Asia, in the tropics, from northern India over to the Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia. It's also known of other names, Meranti, let's see, Bankerai, Philippine mahogany. And Brown Balau has become very popular because it looks so much like Ipe. Let me show you what I mean. Here are two samples, one of Ipe and one of Brown Balau. Let's see the Brown Balau first. Both of these are oiled, by the way. I'll show you the oiled side and the not oiled side. Okay. And here's Ipe. Oiled, not oiled. Now, put them together, you'll notice that the color tones are pretty similar. Ipe happens to be a little bit darker, but it just depends on the board. They're very similar in their color palette. What you'll notice is that Ipe has a lot more character. You see some black veins coming through Ipe, which is not uncommon at all. You really won't ever find that in Balau. Another thing you may notice is the grain in the Ipe is interlocked a little more tightly. Brown Balau is slightly more porous, but for all intents and purposes, they really go together quite well. I'll show you some photos where Brown Balau decking was used with Ipe posts, and you can see they go together really well, which is part of the reason why Brown Balau has become more popular. I think I mentioned the densities are similar, and they are similar. I weighed a sample of Ipe and a sample of Brown Balau. Ipe 1x6 was 2.04 pounds per linear foot. That's the 1x6. And the 1x6 Brown Balau, 1.995 pounds per linear foot. I did the math and it comes out to about 2%. 2.2% difference from the weight per linear foot of Ipe to Brown Balau. Of course, Brown Balau being on a little bit lighter side. All of our hardwood species are dried to about the same percentage, somewhere between 12 and 18. 14 tends to be a pretty popular number. So far, we've been selling, at the time this video is made, we've been selling Brown Balau for about 3 years. And what we found, we have it in all sorts of different climate conditions, from Tallahassee, Florida, up to New York. We found that Brown Balau is about as stable, almost exactly as stable as Ipe, which is a really important element when it comes to decking. You don't want these boards twisting and turning and bucking off the joists. Brown Balau seems to be very stable. It's still as susceptible as Ipe and any of the other species to cupping. We really want to promote airflow. I have a video about cupping and airflow. I probably need to make another one going into more detail. But as far as performance, it's performing just like Ipe. Natural rot resistant and insect resistant, that seems about the same. We don't have an ASTM fire rating on Brown Balau yet, but based on the density of Brown Balau, the fire spread test results tend to correlate with the density of the wood pretty tightly. So based on the density, you're probably looking at a high range B, probably not quite getting into that A category like Ipe. This was interesting to find out. So Ipe has very small amounts of silica present in the wood, which is known to have a blunting effect on tools like bits and saws. Apparently Brown Balau has small presence of silica as well. Don't overthink that. Standard saws, standard drill bits are all going to work on both Ipe and Brown Balau, but if you're doing a lot of cutting, you may find Balau to have a similar blunting effect to tools like Ipe does. I mentioned it come from Southeast Asia, so it kind of goes without saying that it's very popular in Australia. It has, in the last, I'd say, 2 decades, it's become pretty popular in Western Europe, of course, Eastern Asia. In the United States, it's not nearly as well known. Some people are a little bit familiar with the term Philippine mahogany. Very few people know what Bankerai is, or Balau for that matter. Its most mature portion of the market is in the New England, the Northeast United States area. Really down here in the South and the Southeast, Balau isn't really as well known, which is why I'm here making a video about it. The uses of Brown Balau. So, like I said, Brown Balau is very stable, so it lends itself well to all sorts of exterior applications, just like Ipe does. So one of the uses, what I have here is a display of our rain screen siding using Brown Balau. Because it's not quite half the price of Ipe, but kind of getting close, it's been very popular to provide a natural, warm, natural wood feel without having to spend the money on Ipe. What you see here is that it's quite a bit more consistent. It's still going to show natural varieties of wood and the natural variations in color from board to board, but it's not nearly as doesn't nearly have the variation of color from board to board that Ipe does. Over here to my left, I have some 5-inch tongue and groove. It's been very, very popular for 5-inch tongue and groove, and more specifically, it's been very popular for the V-groove tongue and groove. So when folks are doing ceilings and soffits, instead of looking necessarily at Ipe, where they may spend the big money on Ipe for the decking or for the siding, they'll do the ceilings with a 5-inch V-groove tongue and groove. What you see here is a flush joint tongue and groove, but we'll look a little bit closer in some of the photos of the V-groove tongue and groove. Just so happens that the day I'm making this video, we have a really large order of Brown Balau going out for a project out near Lake Oconee at the Ritz-Carlton. So I'm going to take the camera over to the trailer that we have it loaded just to see what a load of Brown Balau looks like in the sunlight. So let's hop over there, and then we're going to go on the computer and I'm going to show you some project photos of Brown Balau and really show some comparison from Brown Balau to Ipe. All right, like I said, we have a pretty large order of Brown Balau going out today. It's going out to a Ritz-Carlton. I think it's around a pool area. This particular project is very low to the ground. I think it's surrounded by travertine and some other type of exterior, decking material, but it's very low to the ground. It doesn't have very good airflow. So I'm going to take the camera and we're going to look a little bit closer at the ends of these boards, and then I'll show you the surface of them. Of course, none of these are oiled. You don't want to oil these deck boards before they're down. It's just not the right way to do it. But here, let me grab the camera and we'll take a closer look at this order. So you can see here, the ends of as you can see from the ends of the boards, these boards have bottom grooves. This is very important for areas that have low ventilation. It's a very good preventative measure that we take to prevent cupping. What you see on the ends of the boards there, of course, is wax. All the ends of the boards are always waxed, and we provide wax to re-wax them as they're being cut. Boards aren't bottom grooved unless you order them that way. But in low ventilation circumstances, it's very important. Like I said before, these boards are just as likely to cup when they don't have good airflow as any of the other hardwood species. See if I can set this down and get an overhead shot. There you go. We'll get a close-up of this. All right, I think I've showed you what I want to show you out here. Let's go back inside. I wanted to do a little bit of work on the computer and show you some images just of Ipe and Brown Balau and how they look similar and where you can find a whole bunch more information on our website about Brown Balau. So let's head inside. All right, like I said, I wanted to show you a couple things on the website. I've never done this before, so we'll see how it goes. All right, to get to our website, you can type in bwdepot.com, or you can type in brazilianwooddepot.com. Both will take you to our homepage. All right, so here's our homepage. There's a couple ways to navigate through the homepage, but the easiest way is let's go to decking, and you'll see this drop-down option here. Ipe, Kumru, Masaranduba, etc. We're going to go down to Balau decking, and I'm also going to open a second tab for Ipe decking because we might look at that in a minute. So here we are on our Balau decking page. There's my silly dog Lucy. Actually, you can see her. She's sitting behind me on the floor. Lucy? And there she is. Okay. You scroll down on here, and we get to our first image of a Brown Balau boat dock. Over here on the left side, there's our navigation buttons. They'll take you different places throughout the page, just quick navigation. But the first thing you see here that I want to point out is that this is Brown Balau decking here, and this 4x4 post is actually Ipe. So as you can see, the Brown Balau and the Ipe go together really well. We'll have a better view of this here as we scroll down. Information about Balau, most of which we've already went over. Let's keep scrolling down. Okay, now we get to a section that says, can you tell which is which? And I'll give you a second to look at it. We've got a soffit here, or the underside of a roof, a large soffit. And then we have some siding here by this little spa area. Well, if you hover your mouse over each of these dots, it'll tell you what it is. This one's Brown Balau and this one's Ipe. Sometimes photos don't tell the whole story. There's lighting and tricks can be played with the camera, but what I'm trying to show here is that they're very, very similar in color tone. And as we scroll down, we get to our customer gallery. Now, every decking page is going to have a gallery of customer photos. This first photo is the one we looked at before. It's just a little bit larger. You can see this Ipe post coming up from the Brown Balau deck. Now, this is the same deck, and you can see the Ipe post over here. This is the same deck or boathouse, really. The customer here is halfway through oiling, so they installed the boards, and now they're getting ready to put the oil, or they're putting the oil down. They're about halfway through, and you can see that oil is just making the boards a lot more rich with color. I imagine that these boards were probably down a month or so before this oil because I can see that they've lost some color, which is fine. There's no problem. Same boathouse again with this little chihuahua on it, and now they've got all the oil. You can see some natural color tone variations in the boards, but really respective to the Brazilian hardwoods, that it's really pretty consistent. And here's a close-up of the grain here. They've got some plugs. I think they installed that boathouse with all plugs. Just wanted to get a close-up here. You see that the grain opens up a little bit, just like Ipe does. Maybe it does it a little more than Ipe, but all of these woods will do that in heavy sunlight exposure. We talked about red Balau. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time, but you can see just how red that Balau really is in this Balau decking photo here. He did a nice job trimming out the columns. I don't want to spend too much time with that. I can make a different video about red Balau. Here's a Brown Balau fence. It's kind of in the shade, and he has not oiled that. And then down here I have a color change progression, and what you'll see is we mentioned yellow Balau, or sometimes we call it champagne Balau, and what this is rather, is 2 pieces of yellow Balau or champagne Balau and 2 pieces of brown Balau. And then I weathered them. I think this one says after 22 weeks in full weather, they turn gray just like any other species that we carry, really all wood. And then we re-oiled them, and you can see the brown tones come right back to brown, and the champagne comes right back to a kind of yellow or more muted tone. I want to show the difference is there is the Brown Balau photo we saw earlier to decking. Again, this is just right here. This decking button brings you here. So as we're scrolling down, we see pictures of Ipe. Look at the color variation in this photo here. You are not going to quite get that out of Brown Balau. And to say that Ipe and Brown Balau look exactly the same isn't right. Ipe has a lot more character, and you can see that with these decking photos here. Some boards are much lighter than others. The grain has a lot more character. Look at the grain here in the wood next to the stone column. I think that's a fireplace. I mean, really wild grain character. Cathedral arches. It just has a lot of character that the Brown Balau doesn't have. But in terms of color tone, very, very similar. Ipe also tends to have a bit more red to it than Brown Balau does. Brown Balau really doesn't have any red to it. But I think that pretty much covers it. I'll make the next video probably about Purple Heart. I just wanted to show you a little bit about this Brown Balau page and how to navigate to these photos. I think the gallery here of customer photos and this color change progression are probably the most helpful things. So I think that's all for now. Thanks for joining us. Say bye to Lucy. And we'll see you in the next video. Thank you.